there was something so poetic about that Mavs comeback win last night in Game 6 to clinch another spot in the conference finals, because if we go back to last season, they basically intentionally decide to miss the playoffs so that they can keep their pick, and everyone hated them for it. But more importantly, it started a very big discussion about where the Mavs were going and all the questions they had. The Kyrie piece, if they make this big trade for him, and if they're going to re-sign him, what does that look like? And is he going to be the Kyrie Irving we all know he could be, but who he hadn't been in a while? And then the bigger question was, who are you going to surround Luka and Kyrie with? Because as we all know, your supporting cast matters. That's a big part of being able to contribute. It's not about just talent, but it's also the right guys. And the Mavs, despite making the conference finals in 2022, for the entirety of Luka's tenure, they hadn't really figured out who those pieces should be. And it was really limiting, and you just didn't know where those pieces were going to come from, because they didn't necessarily have the assets to, go on and get them in free agency or trade, because they made the Kyrie trade. So there was just all those big questions. And you think about how people in Dallas, I think, were really starting to panic after last season's failure. It was a failure. They missed the playoffs. They intentionally missed the playoffs at the end. That was really bad. You think about how many questions and how people were really ready to sound the alarm. And then you fast forward to this Game 6 win, where Luka has 29, 10, and 10, triple-double, but didn't really feel like his best game, surprisingly, because he had 7 turnovers, body language wasn't great, picked up a technical, he was really arguing with the refs, really started to see those bad habits resurface a bit. Kyrie Irving was only 9 of 23 for 22 points, and if I just told you those two stats off the jump, you'd say, well, OKC blew them out, because how else would Dallas win without those two guys playing well? And if they're not going to play well, where is anyone else going to step up for the Mavs? That's such a big question, is can those other guys help along the way? And yet Derrick Jones Jr., an offseason pickup, 22 points, including the fadeaway with the shot clock winding down to put Dallas up 5 with just over a minute left. PJ Washington, who was great all series long, struggled a bit throughout the game, but then wound up hitting a game-tying 3 late in the game, a go-ahead 3 late in the game, and then drew the foul, shooting the 3-pointer, and then hit the go-ahead free throws with seconds remaining. Derek Lively, a draft pick of them in the offseason, 12 points and 15 rebounds off the bench, 4 offensive rebounds, 3 of which came in the fourth quarter. And it was just so beautiful to see. Obviously overcoming a 17-point deficit in general is really impressive, especially considering the stakes. But for all those other guys, for the question about Dallas's other guys to be such a big talking point for the entirety of Luka's tenure in Dallas, and then for those guys to sort of, on a night where the dynamic duo of Luka and Kyrie wasn't playing at their best, for those other guys to come in and pick up the slack and chip away at that deficit to get Dallas back to the conference finals for the second time in 3 years. It's been such a special season for the Mavs, I think, for that reason, because it really feels like, oh, these are the other pieces that we've been looking for a while, and it's really working, and you could see the chemistry and the joy that this team plays with. And just congrats to them for that, because it was a really impressive victory. Again, even more impressive when you consider the circumstances of how your two best players aren't necessarily playing their best, and OKC, obviously super desperate team, you take down the 1 seed. Just congrats to them, and I guess they'll have a day to rest and celebrate before gearing up for whoever wins Game 7 between Minnesota and Denver.